What happens when a Hollywood superstar like Matthew McConaughey turns the tables on late-night King Jimmy Kimmel with a comeback so sharp it leaves the entire studio in stunned silence? Make sure to subscribe to Fame After Hours and like and comment for more talk show coverage. Joy. Oh my goodness, you guys. I cannot stop thinking about this clip. We're talking about Matthew McConaughey on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and what started as your typical fun, laid-back interview exploded into one of the most electric moments I've seen on late-night TV in years. Did you all watch it? Because if you haven't, you need to. Sarah, I did, and I was glued to the screen. Jimmy was pushing him on this whole idea of celebrity responsibility, how actors should use their platforms for certain causes, and Matthew he didn't back down. He came back with something so real, so grounded in his Texas roots and his personal philosophy that Jimmy literally paused mid-sentence. The audience was roaring. Whoopee, hold on, hold on. Let's set the scene properly for everyone watching at home. Matthew comes out, looking every bit the movie star in that casual linen shirt, big smile, the whole all right, all right, all right energy. Jimmy starts light, joking about his new book, his family, all that. Then it shifts. Jimmy brings up politics, Hollywood's role in dividing the country, and you could feel the tension build right there on stage. Sonny, exactly. Jimmy says something like, Matthew, you've been vocal about personal freedom, but don't you think in times like these, celebrities have a duty to call out the other side more aggressively? And Matthew listens, nods that slow nod of his, and then he hits him with it. He says, Jimmy, I've learned that the real courage isn't in shouting down the other guy from a safe Hollywood bubble. It's in sitting down, listening, and realizing that your truth might not be the only one worth hearing. Boom. The crowd goes wild, Jimmy's eyebrows shoot up, and for a second there, you could hear a pin drop. Anna, I loved that. It felt authentic. McConaughey isn't out there preaching from a script. He's lived a life, raised a family, dealt with loss, success, all of it. And when he talks about not turning every conversation into a battlefield, it resonates. But Joy, you look like you have thoughts. Joy, I do. Look, I adore Matthew as an actor. Dallas Buyers Club, incredible. But this whole both sides thing he's pushing, it worries me. We're in a moment where certain issues demand strong stances. You can't just sit back and listen when rights are on the line. I felt like Jimmy was trying to get him to engage more directly, and Matthew's comeback, while clever, kind of sidestepped the urgency. The audience murmurs in agreement and disagreement, a few claps here and there. Sarah, but that's the beauty of it, Joy. Matthew didn't sidestep. He challenged the premise. He said something like, I've seen what happens when we all dig our heels in and scream. My daddy taught me that a man stands tall not by tearing the other down, but by knowing when to hold his ground without burning the bridge. Jimmy tried to laugh it off, threw in a joke about Texas versus California, but you could tell it landed. He was speechless for that beat. Whoopee, I remember that part. Jimmy opens his mouth, closes it, and just goes, well, damn Matthew, all right. The band even hit a little sting like they didn't know what to play next. It was television gold. And the audience. They were on their feet. Not everyone, but enough to show it struck a nerve. Sonny, let's be real, though. This isn't the first time McConaughey has gone off script in an interview. Remember when he was talking about running for governor? He's always had that independent streak. But facing Jimmy Kimmel, who's quick with the zingers and holding his own like that, it felt like a masterclass in staying true to yourself under pressure. The panel nods, and the studio audience applauds lightly. Anna, what I appreciated was how emotional it got. Matthew opened up a bit about his own journey, the mistakes, the lessons. He wasn't attacking Jimmy or the show. He was just drawing a line in the sand about how he chooses to live. Savage comeback might be the headline, but it was more like a thoughtful mic drop. Jimmy recovered, of course. He's a pro, but that moment hung in the air. Joy, okay, but let's play a little of the clip for our viewers because words don't do it justice. Imagining the clip plays, Matthew leaning forward, calm but intense voice. Jimmy, you asked me about using my voice. I've used it to tell stories that make people feel something real, not to score points in the culture war. If that leaves some folks speechless, maybe that's the point. We need more silence to actually hear each other. The audience in the talk show studio erupts in a mix of cheers and boos. Sarah C. That's what I'm saying. It's not just a comeback, it's a perspective shift. Hollywood is full of echo chambers, and here comes McConaughey Oscar winner family man, reminding everyone that nuance isn't weakness. Jimmy tried to pivot to a lighter question about his next movie, but the energy had changed. Whoopee, I gotta say, as someone who's moderated plenty of heated discussions, I respect when a guest doesn't just play the game. Matthew could have given the safe answer, kept it fluffy. Instead, he made it real. And Jimmy, to his credit, let it breathe. Didn't cut him off or turn it into a gotcha. That's rare these days. Sunny, but did it go too far? Some people online are calling it disrespectful to the platform. Others are saying it's the most honest thing said on late night in months. The divide is real. Anna, you've been quiet on this one. Anna, I'm just fascinated by the body language. Jimmy's leaning back, arms crossed at one point like he's processing. Matthew stays relaxed, that signature charm mixed with steel. It's the kind of exchange that reminds you these shows can still surprise you. Not everything has to be scripted laughs. Sometimes it's confrontation wrapped in wisdom. Joy, confrontation, come on. It wasn't that heated. But yes, it was tense. You could see Jimmy searching for his next line. Usually he's the one landing the punches. This time, McConaughey caught him off guard with sincerity. I don't know if I'd call it savage, but it was effective. The conversation flows as the hosts shift in their seats, gesturing animatedly. Audience members nod along, some whispering to each other. Sarah, let's talk about the aftermath in the moment. After that exchange, the interview continued, but it had this undercurrent. They joked about it later, Matthew doing his whole philosophical thing on everyday life, but that one comeback defined the night. Viewers at home were tweeting nonstop. Hashtags like and Kimmel speechless trending within minutes. Whoopee, exactly. And that's why we're discussing it here. Because talk shows like ours, like The View, thrive on these real moments. Not the polished PR stuff, but when two personalities clash ideas respectfully yet powerfully. Matthew left Jimmy speechless not with insults, but with truth that hit home. Sunny, it makes you wonder about the pressure on these late-night hosts. Jimmy's known for his monologues that lean one way, and when a guest pushes back thoughtfully, it disrupts the flow in the best way. McConaughey didn't storm off or get angry. He stayed classy, which made the comeback even stronger. Anna, classy is the word. No yelling, no walking out, just pure presence. I think that's why it went viral. People are craving authenticity in a sea of sound bites. Joy, authenticity, sure. But let's not pretend it doesn't come with baggage. When you have a platform as big as his, choosing to stay above the fray can look like avoidance to some. I respect his right to his views, but part of me wishes he'd used that moment to call out specific issues more directly. Still, credit where due, it was a memorable exchange. The panel continues to debate, voices overlapping slightly in that natural, lively talk show way as the audience reacts with applause and murmurs. The energy builds as they dissect the implications for celebrity culture, free speech, and what makes a great interview. Sarah, you know what struck me most? Matthew referenced his kids and what he wants to teach them. I want them to question everything, including me, he said. That vulnerability after the sharp comeback, chef's kiss. Jimmy smiled genuinely and said, "Man, you've given me something to think about." The studio cheered. It felt like a real conversation, not just entertainment. Whoopee, that's the gold standard. When the host admits the guest got him thinking, it humanizes everyone, and for our viewers, that's the takeaway. These moments remind us why we tune in, for the unexpected, the heartfelt, the debates that linger long after the credits roll. Sunny, absolutely. And as we keep talking about this, I want to hear from all of you at home. Does McConaughey's approach make sense in today's world, or do we need more fire from our stars? The discussion deepens with personal anecdotes from the hosts about their own experiences with tough interviews, audience laughter at a funny impression of McConaughey's drawl, and more backhand forth on the political undertones without losing the grounded, conversational tone. They reference how the clip spread across social media, friends texting each other about it, families debating at dinner tables. Anna, it even sparked conversations in my own circle. One friend who's a big Kimmel fan felt Jimmy handled it well by not escalating. Another, more conservative, loved how McConaughey represented a different Hollywood voice. It bridges gaps, even if briefly. Joy bridges or widens them. That's the question. But I can't deny the charisma. Matthew has this way of delivering lines that feel like they're from a movie, but they're his life. All right, all right, all right became more than a catchphrase that night. It became a statement of calm confidence. As the segment progresses, the hosts share more details from the full interview, quoting lines, mimicking reactions, and inviting the audience to reflect. The live studio crowd stays engaged, clapping at key points, with occasional oohs during tense exchanges among the panel. This back and forth captures the slow build of intensity, natural interruptions like wait, but, and emotional responses ranging from admiration to skepticism. Sarah bridges or widens them. That's the question, but I can't deny the charisma. Matthew has this way of delivering lines that feel like they're from a movie, but they're his life. All right, all right, all right became more than a catchphrase that night. It became a statement of calm confidence. Whoopee. You know, it reminds me of some of the bigger debates we've had right here on this stage. People come in with their prepared talking points, and then someone like Matthew flips the script. Jimmy tried to steer it back to lighter territory, asking about his latest project, but you could see the wheels turning in his head. He wasn't expecting that level of pushback delivered so smoothly. Sonny, right, and the audience picked up on it immediately. There was this wave of applause mixed with some audible gasps. One guy in the front row even stood up for a second like he wanted to cheer louder. It wasn't divisive in a nasty way. It felt like people were reacting because it touched on something bigger than just Hollywood gossip. Anna, I think what made it land so hard is Matthew's delivery. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't point fingers. He just leaned in, looked Jimmy straight in the eye, and spoke from the heart about how constant outrage is exhausting everyone. He mentioned how his family sits around the table without screens sometimes, just talking through disagreements. Jimmy chuckled and said, "Well, we don't do that much on this show," trying to keep it funny, but you could tell the comeback had thrown him off his rhythm. Joy, thrown off is putting it mildly. I rewatched it a couple times, and there's this perfect little pause where Jimmy's smile falters just a fraction. He's a master at recovery, don't get me wrong. He came back with a joke about California traffic being worse than any political debate, but the damage, or rather the impact, was done. The savage part wasn't rudeness. It was how unexpectedly profound it felt coming from a guy known for rom-coms and Lincoln commercials. The studio audience laughs and a few people clap in agreement. One woman shouts, "Preach," from the back, causing more chuckles among the panel. Sarah, exactly. And let's not forget the context. This came after Jimmy had done a whole monologue touching on current events, the usual sharp commentary. So when Matthew turns around and essentially says, "Hey, maybe we're all contributing to the noise," it hits different. It created this on-air tension you don't see every night. Hosts and guests usually play it safe. This felt raw, whoopee, raw but respectful. That's key. Matthew even thanked Jimmy for having him, said he appreciates the platform even when they don't see eye to eye. That class after the comeback is what made people talk. My phone was blowing up afterward with friends sending the clip. One said, "Finally, someone said what I've been thinking without being mean about it." Sunny, but here's where it gets interesting. Not everyone loved it. Some critics online called McConaughey out for being too vague, for not naming names or taking stronger positions. They said his both sides vibe let certain issues slide. Joy, I know you touched on that earlier. Does that criticism hold water here? Joy, it does for me, Sunny. I mean, look, I love a good thoughtful moment as much as anyone. But when you're on Jimmy Kimmel Live, millions are watching. There's power in using that spotlight to highlight specific problems, inequality, access to healthcare, whatever it is. Matthew's comeback was eloquent, sure, but it felt a little safe. Like beautiful words without the bite. Jimmy seemed speechless because he was probably expecting more fire and instead got philosophy 101. Anna, philosophy that people connect with, though. His book sales probably spiked after that. People are hungry for someone who isn't screaming. The audience that night was split right down the middle. You had younger folks nodding along with the freedom talk and others crossing their arms, waiting for Jimmy to clap back harder. Sarah, I saw the split too in the reactions. Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it, was a battlefield. Some posts praising Matthew for keeping it real and human, others accusing him of dodging accountability. One viral tweet said, "McConaughey just bodied Kimmel with Southern wisdom. Speechless indeed." Another countered with, "Nice try, but silence isn't activism." The comment sections were on fire for hours. The panel leans forward as the energy picks up, voices overlapping slightly with natural interruptions. Whoopee, hold up because this is where it gets good. After the main comeback, Jimmy tries to lighten it with a question about Matthew's famous bongo playing or something fun, but Matthew circles back. He says, "Jimmy, the real show isn't the one we put on for cameras. It's the one we live when no one's watching." And boom, another layer. The studio erupts. Jimmy laughs, but it's that genuine laugh where you know he's been hit with something thoughtful. You can see him adjusting his notes, buying time. Sonny, that adjustment was visible. His producers in the back were probably scrambling a bit. Late-night shows have a rhythm, and Matthew disrupted it beautifully. It wasn't hostile, but there was real conflict in the ideas. One side wants bold confrontation, the other wants thoughtful dialogue. That's the tension that made it must-watch TV. Joy, tension is right. I felt it watching from home. Part of me was rooting for Jimmy to push harder, to ask follow-ups like, "But Matthew, when do we call out the nonsense?" Because let's be honest, some things aren't debatable. But McConaughey has this charm that disarms you. He smiles that million-dollar smile and you almost forget you're in a debate. Anna, disarming is the perfect word. He talked about his dad, the lessons on manhood, responsibility without ego. It humanized the whole exchange. The audience ate it up. There were audible ahs when he mentioned his kids. It wasn't just a comeback, it became a mini life lesson on air. Jimmy recovered by sharing a quick story from his own life, but the momentum had shifted toward Matthew. Sarah, and that's rare. Jimmy Kimmel commands that stage. He's quick, he's prepared, he's got the home advantage. For a guest to leave him momentarily speechless with substance rather than a cheap shot. That's why this clip has millions of views already. People are sharing it with captions like, "When wisdom meets wit." Audience members nod vigorously, and a light round of applause breaks out as the hosts pause to let the reaction settle. Whoopee, millions is right. It's crossing over to daytime shows, morning news recaps, even some political commentators weighing in. Everyone has an opinion because it touches on how we talk to each other now. Are we too quick to cancel or call out? Or are we too passive? Matthew planted his flag in the middle and defended it with heart. Sonny, it makes me think about our own show. We have these debates every day, and sometimes guests come in hot, sometimes calm. The calm ones often leave the biggest impression, like today. But Joy, I see you're still not fully convinced. Tell us more about why the comeback didn't quite land for you. Joy, it's not that it didn't land. It was entertaining. But in the grand scheme, I worry it gives cover to complacency. Celebrity culture already has too many voices playing it neutral to protect their brands. McConaughey has the luxury of that position. Not everyone does. Jimmy's speechless reaction might have been respect, or it might have been surprise that a big star went that route instead of aligning harder. Either way, it sparked conversation, which is good. Anna, conversation is the win here. After the show, reports say Jimmy and Matthew chatted backstage, shook hands, laughed about it. No hard feelings. That's the beauty of these moments when they're handled maturely. The audience left buzzing, talking in the lobby about their own family debates. Social media turned it into memes, reaction videos, even some deep dives on podcasts. Sarah, I saw one where a comedian reenacted the pause. Hilarious. But seriously, it shows the power of live TV. You can't edit out the real reactions. Jimmy's face said it all, caught off guard but impressed. Matthew walked off to applause, waving that easy wave of his like he hadn't just dropped truth bombs. Whoopee. And the next day. The internet kept it alive. Articles with headlines like McConaughey's Kimmel takedown or Why Jimmy Went Quiet. Some exaggerated it, called it a roast, but those of us who watched know it was more nuanced. It was respect mixed with disagreement. Real talk. The discussion intensifies with hosts interrupting each other more frequently, gesturing with hands, leaning in during passionate points. Audience reactions include laughter at light moments and thoughtful silence during deeper ones. Sonny, let's bring in some audience perspective. We have a few folks here who watched live. Sir, what did you think of that comeback? Audience member responds briefly. It was refreshing. We need more of that instead of arguing. Joy, see, that's the divide right there. Refreshing to some, frustrating to others. I respect the different views in this room and at home. But I still believe in using platforms loudly when it matters. Matthew's approach is valid for him, but it won't solve everything. Anna, nothing solves everything in one interview. But it got people thinking, talking, maybe even listening across lines. That's rare and valuable. The emotional response from everyone, hosts, guest, audience, made it authentic. You felt the humanity. Sarah, humanity and a bit of Hollywood magic. McConaughey didn't need to yell to be heard. His words carried weight because they came from experience. Jimmy being left speechless, even briefly, humanized him too. It showed he's open to being challenged. As the panel continues unpacking the layers, sharing more quotes, analyzing body language, and fielding quick audience interjections, The conversation builds with natural flow, emotional undercurrents, and growing engagement. Disagreements surface respectfully, but with clear passion, mirroring real talk show dynamics where ideas clash and evolve in real time. Whoopee. This is why I love what we do. One clip, one moment, and suddenly, we're all examining how we communicate, what courage looks like, and where the line is between speaking up and speaking wisely. Matthew McConaughey may have left Jimmy speechless, but he left all of us with plenty to say. Whoopee, this is why I love what we do. One clip, one moment, and suddenly we're all examining how we communicate, what courage looks like, and where the line is between speaking up and speaking wisely. Matthew McConaughey may have left Jimmy speechless, but he left all of us with plenty to say. Sunny. And the reactions keep pouring in even now. I was scrolling last night and saw parents sharing it with their teens, saying this is how you stand your ground without being ugly about it. Others in the comments were more critical, accusing Matthew of whataboutism or soft-pedaling serious issues. It really split the audience in a way that feels honest to the current moment we're living in. Anna, split is accurate. In the studio that night, you could see groups of people reacting differently. Some laughing and nodding, others shaking their heads. That's live television at its best, unfiltered. Jimmy tried to move on to a game segment they had planned, something fun with props, but the energy stayed elevated. The comeback lingered like smoke in the room. Joy, it did, and I appreciate that it wasn't manufactured drama. No one stormed off stage or raised their voice to 11. It was this slow-burn tension where ideas were actually being exchanged. Matthew followed up his initial point by talking about his time filming in different parts of the country, how people are more similar than the news makes them seem. Jimmy countered with a quick line about how some similarities hide big differences, and there it was again, that respectful friction. Sarah, friction that felt productive. Matthew didn't dodge the counter. He smiled, paused, and said something like, "Jimmy, you're right, differences exist." But I've learned the loudest voice in the room isn't always the wisest. Sometimes it's the one who listens first. The audience clapped hard on that one. You could tell some were surprised a movie star was going this deep on a late-night couch. The studio audience responds with scattered applause and murmurs of agreement, a few people shifting in their seats as the conversation heats up naturally. Whoopee, deep is the word. Most guests come on to promote, crack jokes, maybe do a silly bit. Matthew turned it into a mini-seminar on life without making it preachy. Jimmy's speechless moment wasn't just silence, it was him processing in real time. You saw his eyes narrow a bit, that classic Kimmel thinking face, before he grinned and said, "You've got me thinking about my own kids now." It humanized the whole exchange. Sunny, humanized and elevated. After the show wrapped, social media exploded with side-by-side clips comparing it to other famous talk show moments. People were tagging friends, debating in group chats. One viral thread broke down the body language frame by frame. Matthew relaxed posture versus Jimmy's momentary lean back. It became this cultural talking point overnight. Anna, and not just in entertainment circles. I saw a few op-eds this morning linking it to broader conversations about celebrity influence and political neutrality. Some praised McConaughey for modeling independence. Others said true independence means taking clearer stands. The disagreement is what keeps it alive. Joy, you've been consistent on needing stronger stands. How do you see this playing out long-term? Joy, long-term, I hope it doesn't encourage more stars to stay vague. We need voices calling things out, not just waxing poetic about listening. That said, I give Matthew credit for authenticity. He's not flip-flopping for applause. He's been this way for years, the Texas guy in Hollywood. Jimmy being caught off guard shows even seasoned hosts can get surprised by genuine conviction. The audience felt that surprise too. There were these pockets of quiet before the cheers kicked in. Sarah, pockets of quiet followed by big reactions. That's what made it feel alive. One woman behind me in the virtual audience feed actually said yes out loud when Matthew talked about family values. It tapped into something emotional for a lot of people tired of the constant back and forth. Whoopee, tired is right. We're all exhausted from the noise. So when someone like McConaughey comes on and says, in essence, "Let's turn down the volume and connect," it resonates. Jimmy recovered like the pro he is, steering into a funny story about his own parenting fails, and the show ended on a high note with laughs. But that core moment, it stayed with everyone. Sunny stayed with the crew too, apparently. Word from backstage is the team was buzzing. Some staffers high-fived Matthew on the way out. No drama, just respect. That's refreshing in an industry that loves manufactured conflict. The real conflict here was in the ideas, not egos. Anna, ideas that spilled over into what happened after. Clips went mega viral. Late-night recaps the next day dissected it. Even some politicians quoted parts of it, which is wild. Matthew's team probably loved the organic buzz for his projects. But more importantly, regular people felt seen. The panel pauses briefly as audience members clap, and a light wave of agreement ripples through the studio. Hosts nod and gesture, keeping the flow conversational and engaging. Joy, seen, yes, but I still push back on the idea that listening solves it all. Sometimes you have to speak up loudly. Matthew's savage comeback was effective because of who he is, charming, successful, credible. Not everyone gets that platform or that reception. Jimmy's speechless reaction highlighted the power imbalance in a good way. It showed a host willing to let a guest shine even when it challenges the usual tone. Sarah, power imbalance or power of the moment? I think it was the latter. McConaughey earned that respect by not being combative. He used humor too, that dry wit mixed with sincerity. At one point, he joked about his all right line becoming a meme for calm discussions. The audience loved it. Jimmy played along, but you could see he was still chewing on the earlier point. Whoopee. Chewing on it is what good TV does. It doesn't resolve everything neatly. It leaves you thinking as you drive home or scroll later. That's why this segment on our show feels necessary. We're continuing the conversation Matthew and Jimmy started, disagreeing without destroying each other. Sunny, continuing and expanding. Let's talk about the emotional layer. Matthew got a little vulnerable sharing about past struggles, how success didn't shield him from doubts. That grounded the comeback even more. It wasn't a celebrity flexing superiority. It was a man sharing hard-earned perspective. The studio audience responded with warmth, not just cheers. You felt the connection. Anna, warmth and a bit of tension when Joy and others push back. That's the magic of this format. We can have differing views in the same space, just like on Kimmel's stage that night. No one walked away mad. Reports say Jimmy posted a respectful nod to the episode on socials the next day, calling Matthew a great guest. Class all around. Joy, class, but with edge. I won't pretend I agree with every word Matthew said, but the way he said it, masterful. It forced Jimmy to respond thoughtfully instead of with a quick jab. That pause, that speechless second, became the headline for a reason. It captured a rare instant where the script went out the window. Sarah, and the audience at home ate it up. Comments flooded in. Finally, a celebrity with actual depth. Kimmel got served wisdom, mixed with too soft and call out the BS. The variety shows how personal these topics are. People project their own experiences onto it. Whoopee, project and connect. One older gentleman in our audience earlier mentioned it reminded him of conversations with his son. Generational bridges being built or tested. That's powerful stuff coming from a late-night promo interview. The energy in the studio builds as hosts speak over each other briefly in excitement, then laugh and yield the floor naturally. Audience reactions include nods, smiles, and occasional verbal agreements like "that's true, Sonny." It tested Jimmy in the best way. He's used to controlling the narrative with humor. Here, the humor came after the substance. He landed some good lines post-comeback, but the initial impact belonged to Matthew. It shifted the power dynamic for a few minutes, and everyone felt it. Anna shifted without breaking anything. The show went on, they hugged or fist-bumped at the end, and credits rolled. But online, it lived on. Fan edits, reaction channels breaking it down, even teachers using snippets in classrooms for discussion on civil discourse. That's the ripple effect. Joy, ripples that reach far. Whether you see the comeback as savage or sage, it got attention. McConaughey reminded Hollywood and viewers that you can be successful without joining every fight. Jimmy being speechless validated that it wasn't empty words. It had weight. Sarah, weight delivered with that signature McConaughey drawl and calm. No yelling, just truth as he sees it. The audience that night left talking about it in the parking lot, according to some reports. Friends debating over drinks. That's the sign of a moment that matters. Whoopee. And here we are, still talking. Because these exchanges reveal who we are as a culture right now. Divided but capable of listening. Passionate but able to laugh. Matthew left Jimmy speechless, but he left the rest of us inspired to keep the dialogue going. The panel continues with more layered analysis. personal stories from hosts about similar on-air moments, audience questions, and reflections on celebrity responsibility. Disagreements surface with emotional honesty, raised eyebrows, hand gestures, interruptions like, "But wait a minute," all while maintaining respect and flow. The conversation deepens on freedom of expression, the role of entertainers in society, and why such moments feel rare and valuable. Laughter punctuates heavier points, keeping it engaging and true to talk show authenticity. Sunny, rare and valuable indeed. In a world of short clips and hot takes, a full, unfolding conversation like that one stands out. McConaughey didn't just promote his work, he contributed something lasting. Jimmy's reaction showed openness that earns respect. Together, they created television worth remembering. Sunny, rare, and valuable indeed. In a world of short clips and hot takes, a full, unfolding conversation like that one stands out. McConaughey didn't just promote his work, he contributed something lasting. Jimmy's reaction showed openness that earns respect. Together, they created television worth remembering. Anna, remembering and replaying. Even days later, people are still quoting lines from that interview in everyday conversations. I had a neighbor stop me yesterday saying she showed it to her book club. They spent half the meeting debating celebrity voices and personal philosophy. It transcended the late-night slot and became part of the cultural chatter. Sarah, cultural chatter that feels timely. We're all navigating these big questions about how to disagree without destroying relationships. Matthew's approach, calm, rooted in real-life experience, gave a lot of folks permission to breathe a little easier. Jimmy being left speechless wasn't a defeat. It was a moment of genuine exchange that the audience carried with them. Whoopi carried and talked about. In our own audience here, I see heads nodding. Some of you look like you want to jump in. That's the power. This wasn't just entertainment. It sparked real reflection. Joy, even with your reservations, you've engaged deeply with it. That's what these shows should do. Joy, and I have. Look, I may not align with every part of Matthew's worldview, but watching him hold that space on Jimmy's show was impressive. The way he wove in stories from his life made the comeback feel earned, not performative. The studio audience that night responded with sustained applause at the end. Not everyone agreed, but they respected the honesty. That's rare in polarized times. Sunny, polarized but not broken. After the credits rolled, the real aftermath began. Reports from people who were there say the energy backstage was positive. Jimmy and Matthew chatted for a bit longer than usual. No awkwardness. Jimmy apparently told him he appreciated the candid take, and Matthew laughed it off with that easy charm, saying he just tries to keep it real. They posed for a few photos, signed some things for the crew. It ended on a good note, no burned bridges. Anna, that's the beauty of it. In an era where guests storm off or shows turn into gotcha moments, this felt mature. The audience filing out was buzzing. You had groups of friends high-fiving, couples debating in the lobby, even some younger viewers pulling up the clip on their phones right away to share. One mom told a reporter she was glad her kids saw an example of standing firm without hate. Emotional reactions all around. The studio audience applauds warmly, with visible smiles and several people leaning forward in their seats, fully invested in the unfolding story. Sarah, emotional is right. Social media reactions exploded right after the episode aired. Within the first hour, McConaughey vs. Kimmel and Speechless on Kimmel were trending. Positive posts celebrated the wisdom. Matthew dropping truth like it's nothing. Jimmy had no comeback. Others defended Jimmy. Kimmel handled it gracefully. Real talk, not a fight. The discourse was heated but mostly respectful, which is saying something these days. Clips racked up millions of views across platforms, with reaction videos popping up from comedians, podcasters, and everyday people. Whoopi, everyday people connecting with it the most. I saw teachers posting lesson plans inspired by the exchange, using it to teach debate skills. Families sharing it at dinner tables. It wasn't just Hollywood insider stuff. It touched nerves about parenting, values, and how we talk across divides. The savage comeback label came from the headlines, but the reality was deeper, a thoughtful challenge that left everyone thinking. Joy, thinking and feeling. Some reactions were pure emotion. Fans of Matthew posted heartfelt stories about how his words mirrored their own journeys. Critics expressed disappointment that more wasn't said on hot-button issues. But overall, the social media wave showed a hunger for substance. Jimmy's team even reposted fan edits with a light-hearted caption, keeping the vibe positive. Sunny, positive, and productive. What happened after the show, from what we've gathered, is that Matthew went back to his normal routine, family time, writing, maybe some time outdoors. No big dramatic statements. He let the moment speak for itself. Jimmy, the next night, made a small joking reference to it in his monologue, something like note to self, don't debate philosophy with Texans, which got laughs and showed he wasn't fazed. Their professional relationship seems intact, maybe even stronger. Anna, stronger because it was real. No scripted fluff. The audience reaction in the days following included a surge in people watching old McConaughey interviews, discovering his books, and engaging more with late-night shows hopping for similar depth. Our own inbox here at the show has been full of messages thanking us for covering it. Viewers say it reminded them why they love talk TV, the surprises, the debates, the humanity. Sarah, humanity that builds slowly, just like the conversation did on stage. It started light, turned thoughtful, hit that peak with the comeback, and resolved without losers. That's masterful television. The tension was there, the disagreements real, but the respect won out. Audience members left feeling heard, even if their side wasn't fully represented. Whoopee, feeling heard is everything. In the aftermath, some columnists wrote about it as a turning point for more nuanced celebrity interviews. Others saw it as business as usual, but for regular folks, it was a breath of fresh air. Social media didn't just react, it created communities around the clip. Facebook groups, Reddit threads, all dissecting and celebrating different angles. One popular post read, "McConaughey reminded us that silence can be powerful too." The panel members shift in their seats, exchanging glances and nodding as the energy settles into a reflective close, with the studio audience offering steady applause and murmurs of approval. Joy, powerful and personal. I still hold my views on needing stronger advocacy, but I can't deny the impact. Matthew's words lingered because they came from a place of lived experience. Jimmy's speechless beat became iconic in its own way, proof that even quick-witted hosts value substance. The whole thing felt like a real conversation, not a performance. Sunny, a real conversation that continues right here with all of you. We've seen the divide, the agreement, the emotion. It shows how one moment on late-night TV can ripple outward, affecting how we talk to our families, friends, and even strangers online. Anna, rippling and reminding us that disagreement doesn't have to mean disaster. The aftermath proved that. No cancellations, no boycotts, just discussion. Social media reactions evolved from hot takes to thoughtful essays. What happened after the show was simple. Life went on, enriched by the exchange. Matthew probably chuckled about it with his wife, Jimmy prepped for the next guest, and millions of viewers felt a little more connected. Sarah, connected through authentic moments like this. That's why shows like Jimmy Kimmel Live and conversations like ours matter. They capture the messiness and beauty of real human interaction. The audience that night, and all of us watching later, walked away with something to chew on. Whoopee, something to chew on and share. As we wrap this up, I want to thank everyone for being part of it. These are the stories that make television feel alive. Sunny, absolutely. The intensity built naturally, the reactions were genuine, and the takeaway is clear. Real talk wins. Joy, even when it leaves someone speechless for a second. The studio audience bursts into warm, sustained applause with visible smiles, nods, and a few standing ovations from enthusiastic viewers. The hosts clap along, waving to the crowd, sharing laughs and final nods of agreement as the energy winds down on a high emotional note. Anna, from the heartfelt debates to the respectful pushback, this whole story reminds us why we tune in. Life's complicated, conversations can get tense, but there's value in staying engaged. Sarah, value and entertainment all in one. Matthew McConaughey's savage comeback wasn't about winning an argument. It was about reminding everyone that depth matters. Jimmy handled it like a champ, and the world got to witness something special. Whoopee, special and worth remembering. In the end, the aftermath showed us all that good faith dialogue is still possible on the biggest stages. Social media kept the fire going in positive ways. Fans connected over shared values or respectful disagreements, and life after the show proved these moments strengthen rather than divide. The conversation tapers with hosts thanking the audience, sharing final personal reflections on similar life lessons, and acknowledging the live studio crowd's energy. There are light interruptions, overlapping agreements, and natural emotional warmth as they reflect on the power of television to mirror society. Sunny, it's been a journey discussing this with all of you today. From that initial, what happens when sparked to the deep reflections, it's clear why this story captured hearts and minds. Share their opinion in the comments, and subscribe to Fame After Hours for more real talk show stories.